Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I'm curious about AI. My guest today is Kevin Surace, who has an incredibly decorated resume in AI. He's a futurist, he's a frequent keynote speaker, he's been an expert in AI since the 90s, and he was once named by CNBC as one of the top innovators of the decade. And way back when, he actually did much of the work in AI that led directly to Siri and Alexa. Kevin and I had an incredibly wide-ranging, sweeping conversation about where AI is now and where it's going, the upsides, the challenges, all that stuff. And I think the takeaway is I love that Kevin is a full-throated optimist when it comes to AI. And weirdly, I think it's almost an underrepresented voice at this point. I think a lot of what we're hearing, understandably, is concerns and safety risks and how can we keep AI in check and all that. I appreciate Kevin is really banging the drums of this will improve lives in so many ways. We, of course, do get into some of the concerns, risks, challenges. I should also honestly offer a trigger warning for writers out there like me and illustrators who are concerned about AI replacing much of their work. Kevin is refreshingly candid on saying things like, yeah, that's probably going to happen. So if you are a creator concerned about AI eating your breakfast, this podcast will do nothing to quell those concerns, I fear. And we get into all of that. We also have some respectful disagreements on some of the trade-offs of AI and how that can shake out. And I enjoyed that spirited discussion. We cover everything ranging from AI robots to AI assistants to whether there will be replicants to the philosophical questions of AI sentience and a ton more. It was a really fun conversation. I'm glad Kevin stopped by and looking forward to chatting with him again. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Kevin Surace, CNBC's Innovator of the Decade and keynote speaker and AI expert. Kevin, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Super excited to be here. It's going to be a fun hour.
So, Kevin, you've been in this space for a minute now, and you have done work that is affecting the average person, whether they realize it or not. Tell us a bit about your journey into AI and projects you've worked on that have had a massive impact on the AI world.
Yeah, back I really started in this space back in the mid to late 90s. And of course, the technology we had and the compute horsepower wasn't what we have today. But the idea was to build the world's first virtual assistant. It was called Portico, My Talk, Magic Talk. Mary was her name. Actually, that came out of recognizing that people started to get cell phones. We didn't have smartphones yet, but cell phones. And they were in the car and they wanted access to information like their email, and they wanted to know what was on their calendar and where to go and all of that. And they couldn't read anything, right? They couldn't see their phone. There was nothing on the phone to read anyway, but they needed to listen. And so we felt if you could talk to Mary and Mary could get that information and tell you what it was, where to go next, even answer your phone. She was great. She'd answer your phone. Hi, this is Mary. I'm Kevin's virtual assistant. How can I help you? Oh, I see you'd like to schedule some time on his calendar for Wednesday. You know, he has a half an hour open at 3:30. Okay, we did that in the mid 90s,
Wow.
right? So all that technology built at General Magic, a company called General Magic, public company at the time, ended up getting licensed and became the basis of everything from Siri to Alexa and everything we know as virtual assistants today. And a lot of what we did said, how will people want to interact with what they know is a computer, but it sounds human? Because that was the first human sounding thing that you could talk to, right? And it turns out, based on a book from Reeves and Nass at the time out of Stanford called The Media Equation, people want to actually interact the way they interact with people. Now, We'll get into ChatGPT in a minute and how much they put guardrails on it to sort of keep it from telling you it loves you. We used to allow Mary specifically to tell you that she loved you, and it was and thank you, and I'm honored, and all those things. And the reason we did that is because the psychology says that's how you know how to interact. That's the only way you know how to interact since you were a child, right? And so if you say I love you and the thing says I'm not able to respond to you, you go, I hate this thing, right? The emotions that come out, and who put guardrails like that, and who put rules like that, and this is dumb. And they actually did much better by just listening, and to, well, I love you too, and I care about you, and that's why I answer your calendar every day, right? Uh, so look, great basis, a great intro to AI. We had a big team. We spent $100 million building out that technology that is, some of which you use every day today, and it's continuing to grow and become the next generation of virtual agents, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Given how advanced your work was in the mid 90s on this, are you surprised that now Alexa and Siri in particular seem almost crude and less
Yeah,
advanced
they
at
were
the
less
moment?
advanced. Siri was less advanced the day it came out, and it didn't get more advanced. And you go, how can it be less advanced than what we did in the mid 90s? Well, their purpose was quite different, right? If I'm Apple, I am trying to sell smartphones, and I'm going to process a little bit on that phone and a little bit out in the network. And my job isn't to answer your phone and be your secretary. My job is for you to interact with the phone in a
Mhm.
remote, using voice. And so, even though it used all the same technology and same characteristics, many of the features that we thought that were amazing, like, I mean, in 1998, we could get your stock quotes.
Hmm.
And like I said, she could answer your phone and she'd read your email. Siri can't read your email today, right? Still can't do that. And yet we could do it then. Now, I think in another year, Siri will be able to. But we did it in the late 90s because that's what people wanted. And we were there for what people wanted, not to sell smartphones. It was a service. And nobody was going to pay $99 a month for the service if it didn't do what you wanted. And where Siri is an add-on feature for a smartphone at $1,000, right?
Right. While we're talking virtual agents and AI agents, let's go there next. What do you see as the most exciting and useful application of AI agents, and how do you see them evolving in the next couple of
Yeah.
years?
Well, believe it or not, even before I went to General Magic, but while I was there as well, General Magic invented the concept of software agents. An agent that, in fact, the vision was an agent that would, you'd say, I want to get tickets to, it wouldn't have been Taylor Swift at the time, but if there was a Taylor Swift at the time, it would have been Taylor Swift. And it would scour and search and call people and do everything on your behalf until it got you those tickets, right? Within a certain constraint. And we felt that that was a powerful concept. We did some of that with our virtual assistant, but we didn't do as much with agents as one could. But today, an agent that represents you, that is built on a large language model, a chat GPT like technology, would be incredibly valuable, because today you've got to go to chat GPT and ask a question maybe, or form a prompt and get something back, and we'll talk about how useful that is and how interesting, right, and how to use it the best. But an agent would already know what your needs and wants are, and would be there, of course, to answer your questions, but also would be scanning your email, would be
Hmm.
looking at what's on your calendar and say, Kevin, in 15 minutes, you've got the following thing. Would you're going to have to leave on time, whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And so now you've got an assistant, a personal agent that knows a lot more about you. Hey, Kevin, last year you went to do this, and I found that this is available now. Would that be interesting, or whatever? So you got someone who knows your wants and needs, and continues to grow and learn about your wants and needs and your styles. And Kevin, you got in an argument with this person at the office. I would suggest handling it in the following way that would still characterize the way you would handle it, but probably will save the relationship. Okay, very valuable. We
Hmm.
all could use that once in a while. So I think the future is agents much more than we're going to some website and typing something in.
Hmm.
And that agent might be part of our phone, might be part of our computer, might be part of our life, someday might be a true robotic agent. Those are really coming along. So I can see that that's going to happen in the next maybe 5 years, but certainly 10. So look for having a companion in your life that is your computerized, super smart, large language model based companion agent And that to
Possibly
me,
a possibly a coach, right? In theory, this could be someone who
all the time.
isn't just suggesting email grammar improvements. They could be saying, "Hey, don't forget your New Year's resolution was to drop 10 pounds and you're
Yes,
now eating this and consider this
yes,
instead." And that could be freaking annoying probably too. But it's easy to imagine someone who knows everything about you and can
that's
kind of
right.
give you encouragement and motivation.
No question. They'll encourage, they'll motivate, they'll do all they'll do the things you want. I mean, you program them. I think that, some people think, oh, that's a dystopian world, and I wouldn't want any part of it. And I would, you will want a part of it. And in fact, at some point when they are robotic, which will certainly happen in the next 10 years, great advances in robot training, which we can talk about a little bit just in the last 6 months. But if you had a robot that knew everything about you, knew your household, could call the plumber on your behalf, could deal with problems in the household, and could cook and clean every night.
Hmm.
Let me say it again: cooks and cleans every night, puts the dishes in the dishwasher, right? Makes your favorite meal, orders whatever materials are needed for that meal, whatever ingredients are needed for that meal. Don't tell me you're not going to get that. And I know a lot of people listening, I would never get that. Yes, you will.
Day one, absolutely. I'm getting this robot.
That's
I,
right.
I am done cleaning toilets. I'm done with that. That's
Th-
my robot's
That's
job.
right. That's right. And there are robots that clean toilets right now, but they're not exceptionally good at it. But these are going to be quite a bit better because as we move towards humanoid robots, they can do what we do. And people always say, well, why does it have to be humanoid? Because we designed our house, we designed our world around two arms and two legs and a head. It's how we designed it, right? The kitchen works that way. So if I had a little 2-foot robot that could cook, it couldn't cook in my kitchen because it
Hmm.
couldn't reach the counter, it can't reach the oven, it can't do anything, right?
Very cute
So
though.
very cute, but we're going to end up with robots about the size of humans because that's how we created our life to work.
Well, and also they have to be that size because when Terminator becomes a reality, they have to be that. That's okay. So this is such a sprawling topic and kind of tough to get our arms around. I'm just going to ask you a jump ball, big picture question.
Sure.
What do you see as the most transformative impact of AI?
Well, sure, look, there's generative AI, which is a small subset of all of AI.
Sure.
But I'm going to talk about generative AI because I think for the moment it's the most visible and it's probably having the most impact broadly.
Hmm.
So we've got AI that is working in banking and insurance and other areas that is wickedly good and also making investment decisions that's better than humans and that is and facial recognition for law enforcement, all kinds of things, right? Those are all, almost all, not all, but many of them are deep learning models, and they've been able to gather from millions or trillions of bits of data enough information to provide insight when new information comes in. So those are in our lives, but we don't realize them.
Yep.
But perhaps the biggest impact to humans overall is the transformer, which is a type of deep learning model, right? It's a type of neural net. But the thing with the transformer is it's gone out and learned the entire English language. It's learned other languages, but just for the purpose of this conversation.
For folks who aren't as close to
Oh yeah,
this,
yeah,
define
sure,
what transformer means in this
yeah, yeah,
context.
yeah,
Thanks.
sure. In 2017, Google had a great breakthrough. The breakthrough had nothing to do with building a large language model in the way we use them today, like ChatGPT. It had to do with the way we translate English to other languages. So we used to translate English to French word by word. And in fact, junky translators still do that. And the problem with that is their sentence structure is different. A sentence structure in French or Spanish is different than it is in English.
Hmm.
And so while the person in France would understand what you were saying, it was a mangled sentence. It wasn't correct. The verbs and the adjectives and everything was in the wrong place, but they go, all right, you're using a translator and you don't know what you're saying, but I understand, you want the foie gras for lunch, right? Okay, I get that. So they had a brilliant idea that said, I think we have enough compute horsepower now to, instead of learn word for word translations, we will learn an entire phrase. So if you give me a sentence, I will wait till you say the entire wait or type the entire sentence, and then I will interpret the sentence properly in the sentence structure of French or
Hmm.
Spanish.
Hmm.
Okay. That is what the transformer model is. It builds sentences in another language because it knows all the sentences in English.
Yep.
And it had to learn billions of sentences in English because combinatorially, there's a lot more than there are words. So I'm going to pretend, maybe there's 100,000 words that are really active in the English language, but you could combine those into billions of reasonable
Sure.
sentences, tens of billions. Okay. All right. That's day one. Then what happens over the course of a few years is people begin to realize if you could learn phrases instead of regurgitating back that phrase in another language, you could actually ask a question and it would form the appropriate phrase back to you in your same language because I
Mhm.
learned phrases. Let me give you an example. If I said today was my birthday, it isn't. And I said, hey, Jeff, it's my birthday today. What would you say?
Hopefully, happy birthday. Yeah.
Probably happy birthday or happy birthday, Kevin.
Right.
Those are the only 2 or 3 words that can possibly come back.
Yep.
So a large language model has seen people say it's my birthday and has seen that phrase come back enough times to know that it needs the form happy, then birthday, then Kevin. Those 3 words. And what it's doing is based on the phrase I gave it, it is putting probabilities on every word in the English language of which should come back, right? So llama isn't the word I would say first to me. I wouldn't say house. I wouldn't say microphone. I wouldn't say podcast. I'd say happy, right? It's the highest probability, highest statistic, highest thing that comes up, then birthday, then Kevin. And that is all a transformer is. Okay. All we're doing is placing one word after another based on essentially in GPT-4 learning perhaps 1 trillion phrases. And if you learned 1 trillion phrases, you'd understand how to say phrases back and you'd understand what should come back once you ask a question. And then you could start asking larger and larger questions and it could start looking for combinations of those sentences, not understanding what it was you said, and come back with the appropriate sentences that match that,
Kevin, that is the most lucid description of transformer and large language model I've ever heard, and I've heard plenty.
Thank you.
So thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
So you were saying that with the advent of a transformer, things changed several years ago. So
Changed because it's the first time the public worldwide could talk to a computer, to AI, ask it virtually and talk to it in its own language,
Mhm.
right? So anyone, including my mom, can talk to the darn thing in English. Doesn't have to know C++, doesn't have to know Java, doesn't have to know any computer language whatsoever, and can still get value from this technology. Now, in all of human history and all of computer history, we really haven't had much of that. We haven't, we send people to school to learn how to do this. So if I said in 10 years ago, build a language model and be able to send something in and get something out, a programmer in Python would have done that and been
Mm.
able to talk to it in Python and get stuff out. But that's limited to Python programmers. But today it talks in English because it learned English. This is fascinating. And it learned French and it learned Spanish and other things, right? So this is fascinating. So everyone can now talk to a computer, a massive, massive computer in the cloud, OpenAI, hosted by Microsoft at Azure, and it can talk back in your own language as well. That is game changing. So that allows us to say, wow, I can have my own personal assistant. I can have
Mhm.
my own historian. I can have my own research assistant. I can have my own legal assistant. I can have my own medical assistant. I can have anything because it learned every sentence ever spoken in the English language, both fact and fiction. It's not always right, but its sentence structure is always excellent.
Hmm. I usually withhold this question until the end, but given your fluency with these assistants and given your role in creating them years ago, I'm curious, what are you using today for assistance and or even ChatGPT? How are you using that for productivity or as a historian giving you advice? What are some ways you're using it personally, and what are some ways you imagine using it down the road?
So GPT-4 in particular, which is the most advanced model we have. Now that's more advanced than Chat GPT, if you will, but anyone can get a subscription to it for like $20 a month. So GPT-4 and DALI 3 is there, and some other
Hmm.
capabilities. Um, you can do a lot with GPT-4. I can summarize a spreadsheet. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I can generate all kinds of content. Remember, mostly these are content generators. Okay, so it's a historian because it's read all of history, and I can ask it to generate some content about Abe Lincoln, and it's read enough about Abe Lincoln. It's going to give me some interesting content about Abe Lincoln, right? Including tell me something that most people probably don't know about Abe Lincoln, and it'll give it to me. It may not be 100% right, but it's going to give it to me. So when you look at this as a content generator, it is wickedly good.
Yep.
Now, if you looked at it and said, "You're a very smart AI, please solve, cure cancer," it doesn't actually know how to cure cancer because humans haven't cured cancer, therefore it never read about curing cancer. There's no ability to cure cancer, right? There is AI that is working on that. I met with a company today that's doing amazing work on essentially curing cancer. That's a different kind of AI. This AI generates content, so I use it for generating content, summarizing content. By the way, generating much of my presentations. I do 40 to 50 keynotes a year, mostly on AI, but also on disruptive innovation, Silicon Valley style, and also on joy equals success. We can cover that in a few seconds. So I used to go out and hire an illustrator because I needed this illustration that was beyond my ability to illustrate. And for $1,000 in a few weeks, I'd get back, really some wickedly great things that I could have never done myself. And the outcome of that was it made my presentations really great. Today, I can have DALL-E 3 or Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion generate those illustrations in a matter of seconds for basically a penny or less. Okay. Now we're talking about upwards of $1 million reduction in cost, a million X reduction in cost. And who knows, almost a million X reduction in time, right? This is market changing if you know how to use it. It's a game changer. Now, I'm sorry that I'm no longer, hiring the illustrator. I do appreciate that impact. But on the other hand, my job wasn't about hiring illustrators or waiting 4 weeks. My job was to get the presentation done. And I have 96 slides and I got a lot of illustrations and I need them all in the next hour. I can now have them in the next hour.
You
And there
had
was
no
no way I
moral
could do that.
obligation to try and sustain
No,
livelihoods, right?
no, you can't, right?
Right.
And so, look, some tasks are certainly at risk
Yep.
with Gen AI. I think if I was an illustrator, this might be a little bit scary if that's what I did.
If I was a writer, I'd be really nervous. Good thing
That's
that's
right.
not what I do for a living.
No, that's exactly right. If you're so people, there are thousands of people that all they did was write blog posts for companies.
Yeah.
And you hire them, and they're roughly $500 to $1,500 a blog post, right?
Yeah.
That's what they. Okay, I can sit down and now have a blog post written in 30 seconds. I can edit it in a few minutes and have it up. And it used to take me, a couple of weeks to get a blog post written by a blog post writer. Now they're going to say, well, it's not as good. It's not as differentiated. It's not as this. It's not as that. I don't actually know that to be true because I can also ask ChatGPT the following or GPT-4. I have to write 52 blog posts this year. I need 52 ideas around the topic of podcasting so that each week I have a different blog post about podcasting. It will generate 52 ideas for me, many of which I'll use, some of which I won't, some I'll change, whatever. I didn't have 52 ideas 30 seconds ago, and now I have 52 ideas. And then I can say, please write a 500-word blog post for each of the 52 ideas.
Yep.
And it will.
Yep. And it gets better. And especially, I know you know this, but for listeners, when you first prompt it, it might be a little generic, but obviously you can push it and nudge it and say, actually, I want this kind of tone. I want it to be in the style of The Economist, or I want some of these 52 ideas to be wild. I want some to be humorous. I want some to be fucking crazy and out of left field, right? You can kind of nudge it just as you would.
More than nudge, you can drive it, right? So
yes.
in my presentation, I'll give them, I'll say, write about this company, and I'm speaking to that company, right? Could be 5,000 people in the audience. Write about this company in this and make it an advertisement in the style of Ernest Hemingway.
Yep.
And 5 seconds later, in the style of Albert Einstein. Now, look, those are very different styles. It's not that I couldn't have done it or you couldn't have done it, but we might have taken hours. We would have had to go back and read some Einstein and pick out some words that he uses and fit them in. Forget it. There's a machine that does that now.
Yeah.
Machine that does that now. Just like there's a machine that does accounting for us. It's called Excel. Does a really good job. does a really good job at math. That's our math model. We now have a language model.
So, to your point about how much that saved you in cost and how effective it is and how efficient it is, let's segue to business and how you see AI impacting the world of business and the economy and markets. What, let's call it 5 years from now, how will corporate America, how will the landscape of business look different as AI gets more and more mainstream and adopted?
Here's what I would say. What's really critical is to understand that your competitor is probably already using these tools.
Mm.
And some of what they do, not everything they do, some of what they do, they might be 10, 20, 40, 50, 100 times more productive than they were just a few weeks before. Now, what happens if you've got a business? I don't know, you're in the insurance business. I'm going to make it up, right? You're in the insurance business and you go, well, we have a lot of regulations and we have to go slowly and we have to be careful and we have to. There's a group of 22-year-olds coming out of Stanford. Again, I'm making it up, doesn't matter. That go, why don't we be an AI first company? We're going to be an AI first insurance company. I'm going to drive down the cost of delivering insurance. And I'm going to be able to deliver insurance to 1 million customers with 10 people in the company. And that's going to cut the cost of insurance, and no one will be able to beat me. And no old company will be able to beat me because I'm leveraging AI. And each of us will be the equivalent of 100 people. So
Mhm.
with 20 people, it's like I have 2,000 employees, except I only have 20 people. That is what's happening. And you are going to be driven out of business by a bunch of 22-year-olds that are AI first, not AI last. And so you and your big business are trying to be AI last or AI somewhere in the middle, and some other group of kids is going to lead the parade. Not a 22-year-old's kid. I'm going to get in trouble for that, but you get the point, right? Younger than these, 65-year-old CEOs that are heads of these companies. So an AI-driven, an AI-led, an AI-first company already has 100x advantage over one that isn't AI first. So, if you don't think your competitor is doing this, some competitor is, and you're going to get crushed.
So, extrapolating, combining that point, which I agree with wholeheartedly, with your earlier observation about how much, well, you used to pay an illustrator $1,000. Now, for a penny, you get a pretty darn good thing with DALL-E. Extrapolating from both those things, what's that going to do to the economy, to the workforce? If 90% of jobs are lost, what are we all doing all day? How do you envision
Well,
this impacting the actual world of work?
yeah, what I think is 80% of tasks are going to go by the wayside by 2050.
Hmm.
However, tasks are not jobs. Okay. You do many tasks in your job. I do many tasks in my job. Some of those tasks are easily automated today with AI. Some of them are slightly augmented, and some of them AI actually can't do it all. And so all of us are going to be robot overlords, right? We are going to own the AI and decide what to do, when to do it, how to edit it, etc. But if I'm a content creator, and I don't mean a podcaster, but limit certain kinds of content, the days of me saying, "Wow, I am a really great writer," so is everyone now.
Yeah.
So is everyone. So I'll give you an example. In the late 80s, Excel came out from Microsoft, right? Shows up. And if I was in finance, I thought my job was over. It's like, that's it. You won't need finance people
Hmm.
because there's now Excel and the numbers will go in there and they'll all be crunched. You'll just need one person. And I used to have 25 people here crunching numbers with calculators and ledger books with pencils. And now I don't have that. It's all in Excel, right? On day one, boom, right? So those who embraced Excel not only led their company in finance ultimately, or led companies in finance, they built bigger finance departments to be more strategic with that information. And in fact, we employ more people in finance now than we did when Excel came out, which is fascinating. So we made finance highly productive. By doing so, we actually drove down the cost of goods and services from that company because now finance could process much more, many more, transactions at a much lower cost. And we've seen this throughout history. I'll give you another example. General Motors, you know when they put their first robot on the line to help assemble cars?
Hmm.
1961.
Hmm.
Now, had they not done that, they would employ less people today than they do today. Now, today, a car is heavily roboticized, yet GM employs more people today than 61. Why is that? By adding robots to the line, they took the relative cost of an automobile from about $300,000 today, which is what it would cost to hand build an automobile. And by the way, there are people doing that, including GM has one hand built automobile in the Cadillac line.
Hmm.
You can buy it; it's $300,000. And they brought it down to 15 or 20,000, thus increasing the demand for the goods and services because you drive down the cost. So increased productivity drives down the cost of your goods and services. And when you drive down the cost of goods and services, you drive up demand. That actually drives up revenue, bottom line, and ultimately GDP. Why do I know this? The highest GDP is with countries that have the highest productivity, highest per capita output, period, full stop, right? Those have been tied together for 1,000 years.
I love both of those analogies. I wonder, though, in the case of Excel, is there something kind of qualitatively different about AI from traditional tech innovations or tool innovations we've seen in the past, right? So in Excel, yes, to your point, the people who used to be using slide rules and abacuses now use Excel. Their time is freed up to do kind of a higher order thinking about, oh, cool. What if we have some creative uh, use of this account instead or whatever, right? The difference is, I think, qualitatively, that Excel wasn't able to do more than add, subtract, and all those things, right? Whereas AI is actually able to, even now, the ChatGPT 4 is the worst it will ever be, right? It'll only get better and smarter and better and better. Like ChatGPT 5 presumably will be able to do some of the higher order thinking from an accountant. So, like, I guess my question is, as AI gets better and better, what really, what will humans be able to do that AI
Well,
won't be able to do?
let's look at it another way, right? I don't know that GPT-5 will be substantially better than GPT-4. I think people have these ideas that when we go from a trillion tokens to 10 trillion tokens, it'll be 10 times
Fair,
better.
probably diminishing returns. Fair, fair.
A huge amount of diminishing returns. In fact, the entire model of the transformer probably has a limit to how good it can get. It was
Mm.
trained on unsupervised data. That means we didn't tell it what was fiction and nonfiction, right? Simply trained on a mass of data on the web, and it knows how to build sentences, and it is a language model. Excel is a math model. And when Excel showed up, you had people who could do long division in their head, and though they were by the way, that skill was very valued
Mhm.
until Excel showed up, and then it wasn't valued at all. Right? Didn't never. When's the last time you did long division in your head?
Like 12 years old, maybe?
Yeah, that's right. Fourth grade. I don't know,
Yeah.
something like that. So that's a skill that's no longer actually needed by humans. So I would say that a lot of the things we do today will no longer be done exclusively by humans because you actually don't need to do it with humans anymore. I'm not even sure we should teach it. So, we're teaching kids obviously in school you know, to write papers and, write me a 10-page paper on the following thing and don't use ChatGPT. Okay, let me tell you what's wrong with that. One, they'll never have to write a 10-page paper in their life again, ever, ever. No one's going to ask them to do that. In fact, if you showed up 2 years from now to get a job and say, you know what my skill is? I can write papers without using any AI. They're going to say, you're not for us. Why would I pay you to do something that a machine should be augmenting? Number two, the teacher told them not to use ChatGPT. 100% of the students use ChatGPT. Get past it, okay? Number three, I'm glad they do, and I'll tell you why. Because the skills that students, certainly in university and in high school, have to develop are the skills to use these tools, not the skills to do things that their parents did. You know, there's about half the states, I think, in the United States still require cursive, writing in cursive. There is no one who wants to get something from you in cursive, aside from a thank you card or something, right? Basically, no one actually wants to get that. Now, you could do it to say, I really enjoy the activation of my mind. Great. Not a hireable skill. Great. Okay. So we've got to let go of these things that we pride ourselves. Well, humans write and they create and they can draw and they take photographs, and there's machines that do that now. Oh, yeah, and that's okay. We're going to do higher level things because we still control the AI, meaning this is what I want. This is when I want it. This is how I want it manipulated. This is the output I want. This is how I'm going to edit it. And then I'm going to decide to publish it, right? Now, yes, we could just let AI go wild and do it all for us. But in general, I think what we're going to find is we become sort of the overlords of our language models, just like we're the overlords of Excel.
I'm going to stumble and fumble in asking this question, but isn't part of what you're describing that we can outsource to AI, isn't part of that what makes us human? The ability to logically think and craft a 10-page paper and to reconcile with nuance and to create art. And yes, to your point, machines will be able to churn that out better than we will in the future, but isn't that part of developing our minds and advancing as a species? And I guess I'm wondering.
Let's go back in time. Great question. Let's go back in time. Let's go back before about probably 1930s or 1920s, before there were even mechanical calculators, right? And if we go back further, way further, there weren't slide rules. I can tell you many, many people, especially the mathematicians, would say one of the things that makes humans really unique is we can do math. We understand math. We can add, we can subtract, we can multiply, and we divide. Maybe not everyone can do calculus, but that was unique to humans. You understand, there's nothing else on Earth, no bugs, no birds, nothing else that can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. That made us unique until it didn't. And then we let that go. No one says today, well, it's quite unique. Only humans can add and subtract. I'm sorry, calculators have done that now for 100 years. So a lot of the things that we think are unique. Okay, let's go back further to the wheel. Only a human in this particular town, only humans, and there were 2 humans in this town, were smart enough to pick out the things that needed to go, put them on their back, walk them up the hill to feed the people at the top of the hill. Okay, there are no horses in that town, it's a small island, whatever it is. Okay, fine. One day the wheel shows up, and this guy says, but what makes me unique and human is I can walk these things up the hill and give them to the people. And so he dies a pauper. The second guy says, I'm getting a second wheel, building a cart. Now I can bring 5 times as much up the hill. And that makes me even more human. And in fact, he's way more human because he thought of, how do I use this wheel to my advantage and put him out of business? This happened with the wheel. So what makes this unique?
That's an amazing response. I love it. My last gentle, respectful pushback on this is, and I actually don't disagree with you as far as how the future will likely shake out. I just been wondering about trade-offs, right? And my last example I'll give is when I wrote a book about Alexander Hamilton, did a lot of research on reading founding father era stuff, right? My mind was blown at how smart they all were and how well read they all were, and not just the elite founding fathers, but even the average person now, they've read more than we do now, right? You know why? Because there's no Wikipedia, there was no internet, there was no easy answers, right? So to your point, Kevin, yes, we have so many more tools now to be able to summon facts and figures online. We don't need to read all these dusty old tomes. But folks like Alexander Hamilton did read all they read like thousands of pages of these like probably very dry manuals of economic treatises. And they just knew so much more stuff. And they had their breadth and depth of knowledge was incredible. And I guess I'm wondering, as AI gets more prominence, yes, it'll be more efficient. Yes, our output will be higher. But do our brains get a bit mushier from not
let
having?
me answer that in another way.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with AI. First of all, you can still go read all those tomes right now.
Yeah,
anyone can, right? Nobody stopped you. AI didn't
way
stop
too
you.
lazy for that.
Right. Here's what changed. It had nothing to do with AI. A generation ago, we got video games, and kids grew up with video games, the net, and finally TikTok. They have no interest in reading a tome unless they're forced to. They'd rather just go to TikTok and see, and doom scroll through 1,000 dancing pigs or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Dancing
yeah.
people and pigs and cats and whatever's on there. And so, media overall, and my parents would probably say, well, that actually changed when we got television
Right.
because kids then wanted to watch TV. They didn't want to sit in their room and read. And in fact, overall, across the world, once radio showed up, we had successive generations
Hmm.
of technology that meant that we read less and
Sure.
we absorbed in different ways. Now, today, do I absorb more in terms of breadth than I could possibly reading tomes? Well, of course, because the internet allows me to take in an immense amount of subjects very, very, very rapidly.
Fair.
Very rapidly, right? So I could get as deep as I want in some, but I probably rarely need to get 500 pages deep in something. Probably don't.
Right.
Right. I probably need to take in what's going on, who's doing what's the latest research paper, right? Right. And I need a page of each of those to be smart enough to then say, here's the thing I better go deep on, super deep. If there's a day I need to go super deep on one of these other ones, I will. But the human brain cannot go super deep on everything because there isn't enough time in the world, right? You can't do that, right?
Hmm.
In their time, they were lucky to find a book. They had to get the book. They had to have it delivered to them. And they had to sit down by candlelight and read it, and maybe take weeks to read one and try to retain what they could from that. Maybe take some notes and then do the next one. So the amount of input we can have today probably far outweighs what they did, but they had a different kind of thinking. Now, you might say, look, one of the things they had to develop was critical thinking, something we don't teach in school.
Hmm.
It's something we certainly find a lot of kids coming out of school don't really have. So they have lots of breadth of knowledge and all kinds of things. And then you say, here's a real fundamental problem. We've got, this train is coming and whatever the case is,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
And or I see this all the time. We got a fundamental problem with this piece of hardware that we're designing, and it's very noisy. And no, we don't even know that it's noisy right now. It's not communicating. What should we do? And people just stare at it.
Hmm.
I said, well, why don't we go to the whiteboard and talk about what are the possible things that could cause this, right? So many people have lost the ability to critically think about a problem because they've always been able to just Google something for 25 years and get an answer.
Hmm.
So AI is a further instantiation of everything we've been doing probably since the newspaper came out. And it's a better instantiation, but we've been doing this to our brains for a long time. And remember the phrase that Google was making us stupid, right? And
Hmm.
that was 25 years ago.
Hmm. That was a really good summation. And I think I'd agree that AI is the latest accelerants of a much larger trends. I think that's fair.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned we'll be our robot overlords. Let's piggyback off that. And I'd love to hear your vision of how the world could look differently in, let's say, 2030. And then, hell, let's go 2040, 2050. How do you see? You're such a big brain futurist. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about what the world could look like in 10, 15, 20 years as AI continues to mature.
The companies and countries that embrace new technologies always advance their GDP and advance the overall lifestyle of their people. And I know when I say that, I do know that there's going to be someone who listens and says, "You don't understand. I'm a United Auto worker, and we have an." I get that, right? I don't want to. I don't want to say it brings everyone along. There are always certain swaths of a population that, for whatever reason, sadly get left behind. I don't mean to say otherwise, right? I want to honor that. But statistically and overall, I think that this kind of technology has the ability to make all of our companies and our lives at home better, more fulfilled, give us time to really focus on real critical thinking and real things that we want to think about strategically, and open our eyes to new ideas. So I use GPT-4 as an idea generator all the time. Hey, I need the 10 best ways to make popcorn when you don't have a popcorn maker. I don't, I mean, as an example, boom. I go, Well, I would have thought of most of these, but I wouldn't have thought of them in 5 seconds, number one. And number two, there's three of them I didn't know would work,
Yeah.
right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can ask it, and I have, how can one make chicken nuggets in an industrial process? And it gives you the industrial process to make chicken nuggets. And I checked that literally with a guy who runs a chicken nugget factory, and he said, this is right. This is the process. It's fascinating, right? Now, all of a sudden, I know a lot about chicken nugget process, which I would have never known before. But I can just go like that, and I know how to make chicken nuggets.
I love that you
Uh,
got a chicken nugget guy on speed dial. That's great.
I had him at a conference, but everyone needs one, and just in case. Now, here's the thing. So what does it look like 30, 40, 50 years from now? So higher productivity, better lifestyle. If we get really high productivity, they're 3 and 4 day work weeks instead of 5. Very much.
Okay.
You'll very much be needed, but not in certain tasks. So no human is going to be, even in 2 or 3 or 4 years, tier 1 customer support. That's a ridiculous statement that a human will answer the phone. No, they won't.
Mhm.
It'll be a virtual agent, virtual assistant that answers the phone, probably does a better job. With all due respect to the hard work that these people are doing, everyone knows that is a very hard job. It has high turnover. It's difficult for humans. It's highly repetitive. It's a great place for a machine. It's a fabulous place for a machine, right? And should be mechanized with AI. So I think we're going to look at a world that looks a lot like that. I think we're going to look at a world where we have an agent in our life. We probably, in 10 years or 15 years, have a robot in our home that can help cook, help clean, and they'll get better and better. You will be able to talk to it or he or she or they or whatever it is. And I think it's going to be a better life. Some people will remember the Jetsons. That goes back a long way because it's like a 1960s
I almost made a
cartoon.
Jetsons reference, and I'm like, will anyone
Yeah.
get this?
Yeah, I got it, but it played on reruns for a while. But the thing is a little bit like the Jetsons. You had the maid that was a robot, and you had a flying car. And look, flying cars are coming along faster than driverless cars on roads for all the reasons you can think of. Basically, there's very little to hit up there, and it's a lot easier to avoid other flying vehicles. And so flying cars, flying taxis, whatever, driverless, are absolutely in our future in a handful of years. They're already in front of the FAA. I mean, I think you're going to see approvals this decade, and you're going to be able to have one drop in front of the house, get in it. It'll take you 100 miles for $20 and drop you off, and you'll go, this is unbelievable, right? Vertical takeoff, eVTOLs is what they're called. So that's the future, and a lot of the things you do today that you cherish that are uniquely human, turns out they may still be uniquely human, but they're not going to be unique on planet Earth. You'll do them not quite as good as AI will, and that's still okay, and that's great.
I love how bullish you are in AI. I love this vision of the future. Cars on the table. I am generally optimistic myself, but I do have some misgivings and some concerns. So I'd love to pivot to threats and risks you see.
Sure.
Nothing is an unalloyed good, right? Or few
No.
things. So what do you see as the biggest threats and risks for AI?
So look, the wheel comes along, right? It was used for good and it was used for evil. People used them in war. People used them against people. The car comes along. It was used for good, but you can fill it with bombs and you can make a car bomb out of it, right? It can be used for evil. Every technology we've ever invented, the newspaper, Craigslist, can be used for good, can be used for evil. Period. And AI, the same thing. And it's already happening. There are open source AI models that have been adapted to write phishing emails, millions of phishing emails. Those emails are indistinguishable from human emails. You won't know they're phishing. They are now at a level where they're beating actual experts at writing these things. So they're already being used for evil, certainly around cybersecurity issues. And we're going to see more and more deepfakes, and the deepfakes are pretty darn amazing because you can take a president's voice and take their image and make them say things they've never said, and it will get to the point where you will not be able to tell the difference.
I'm terrified by the deepfake dystopia we're heading into. I think that's my biggest concern, actually.
Yeah, but let me give you an example.
Okay.
We've had a deepfake dystopia for a while. It wasn't video; it was Photoshop, and for 30 years, people would post something and you go, I think that was photoshopped.
Right, but
And
video
forensics,
is always in the oracle of truth, right? Video's always been like, oh, if we see it on video, it must be
well,
true.
okay,
So that's
okay,
my
hang on.
yeah.
And before Photoshop, the photo was the oracle of truth. Period. You saw in a photo was the oracle of truth. And then it wasn't. And
Fair.
now over 20 plus years, we've gotten used to the fact that people can Photoshop things that never happen. And in fact, anyone with very minor skills, can Photoshop Trump hugging Biden. I'm making it up, right? And we can do that quite simply, and could for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
So we no longer, as humans, feel that every photo we see is real.
Hmm.
In fact, we have great doubt that they're real when it seems like that probably wouldn't have happened. And when the person comes out and says that's clearly a Photoshop fake. So that's fascinating, right? So I always look at how did humans respond to technology that was similar in the past, and we responded by eventually figuring out that it was photoshopped. In fact, we made the term photoshopped, an actual verb. It's photoshopped. There's no such thing. So what are we going to do with deepfakes? We're going to make it'll be a couple of years of, oh my goodness, did that happen? And eventually we're going to get used to it. And we're going to say, oh, it was deepfaked. It was deepfaked. We'll make that also a verb. It's deepfaked. We don't believe it. They say it didn't happen. There's no proof it happened. That's it. And we're going to start to look for third party proof, right? It's going to be, I've got third party proof of these 5 people are willing to testify that they were right there and they saw, and they have pictures and they have whatever, and so then then you have proof from many angles and many situations, but we're not going to believe video. Hey, I'll take you one more level. Okay. In the last Star Wars film, Princess Leia is back and talking to us. Okay. Princess Leia, she died before that, right?
Mhm.
So in fact, Hollywood's been able to bring people back from the dead and stick them in movies for 20 years with CGI, right? It costs $10 million to do that.
Right.
And now it
Soon it will
costs
cost
a
a
penny.
fraction penny. Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Now it costs a penny so everyone can do it. But we trusted Hollywood with that technology. So we've seen this before. In fact, Hollywood has been a deep fake since Hollywood started. For 100 years, everything that Hollywood puts out is fake. You can't trust that it actually happened, or that it happened there, or that it wasn't a set, or it wasn't CGI, or it wasn't something else. Right? Right? So we've seen this movie, but it was a movie. And now it's going to be more realistic.
Let's switch gears to AGI or ASI, artificial superintelligence. How do you respond to concerns and critiques that if and when AI gets super powerful, that could pose a potentially existential risk to humans?
All right. How does it pose a risk?
Well, let's say AI, I mean, there's a classic paperclip factory model, right? The AI say, for whatever reason, we want to maximize resources coming to our AI now sentient beings. We decide these meatbag humans don't really serve our needs anymore. So we'd rather focus more energy on our own little servers and less energy on things like water and food for humans. And the tidiest solution is to just nip that human race in the bud and kill us guys. I'm
All
making
right.
this
Well,
up,
let's
but that's the
start. Well,
case.
let's start with it. Let's start with it. First of all, those are robots, and we don't have robots that could possibly do that today. So where we are today is we have large language models and math models called Excel. We have large language models that exist at Azure in one or more of its op centers, of which you could just pull the plug. And by the way, they're not hooked to anything, so they can't do anything. All you can do is ask it a question and get text back. Now, do not hook a large language model to the nuclear arsenal. This is a bad idea, right? But aside from that, by the way, I wouldn't hook Excel to the nuclear arsenal.
Pivot table goes rogue and destroys the
Yes,
world.
exactly. So I mean, what we have is an air gap situation there, purposefully, that no one can do that without a human, literally humans turning the keys. And so we are a very, very, very long way where we have somehow millions and millions of robots that somehow can all communicate with each other and somehow decide, I am going to kill the humans, right? And there's been, this comes out of fictional novels that this is the case, and Isaac Asimov and
Mhm.
others who said, well, we have to program these robots to never do harm and all these things, and that is decades away before we have that level of thing. Now we might have a kitchen and a home robot probably couldn't kill us at all, doesn't have that kind of strength. Hey, one of the interesting things is that a robot approximately our size, it actually gets somewhat difficult to have absolute immense strength. And the reason is we've got motors and solenoids, and feet, basically. And at some point, they can't carry much more than a human can carry, for example. Like they can't just pick up 2,000 pounds. Well, the reason is their feet are our size. And almost no matter what we do, it would break at the equivalent of the ankle, right? It gets really hard because those are movable joints there, and you can't solidify them down hard enough with what ends up being just a solenoid, to do that. And so then you go, well, all right, I got to use stronger materials to try. You start going crazy. And the reason why humans are limited in how much they can, say carry around is because our bodies are built in a certain way, and beyond a certain weight, we just tip over. Like our feet can't hold it, right? Can't hang on to that. And robots that are built like us have certain limitations as well. So certainly a robot, I guess, could grab a knife and try to stab you, but so could the maid. Even today, right? And it's probably more likely, that it's a human that goes crazy than a robot that doesn't really care to go crazy and essentially hurt people. It has no interest. There's no particular reason to do that. We haven't given it a reason. Even if we gave it a reason, they don't think like that. So I think one of the problems is that we like to anthropomorphize all of this.
Yeah.
We like to say, oh, ChatGPT is hallucinating. Okay, it doesn't hallucinate. It read fictional and factual sentences, and it happened to put a sentence together, probably from fiction, that doesn't make a lot of sense to us and isn't accurate. It doesn't claim to be accurate. It just builds sentences. It doesn't hallucinate. I think I'll hallucinate today. No, it just built a lousy sentence.
To that point, and you mentioned robots, and as we wind down here, I'd love your take on a little pet thought experiment I can't get out of my mind. The idea that, to your point, I totally agree. I think robots will be a bigger part of our lives in our lifetime, certainly. As Chat GPT type models get better and better, even if there's not true sentience, right? And I think your point's well taken that we have a tendency to
anthropomorphize everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
So will we, though, ever live in a world where we have, and I can't even saying this word, it's so fantastical and sci-fi, like replicants, have robots that actually have the tech to have our faces look not creepy? And
Well, sure.
We be at a point in our life where we at a bar, like, I'm not sure if that person over there is a human or a robot. Do you see that in the next couple of decades?
Well, we built some robot faces that interact the way our faces do. I'm going to predict that for the next several decades, it's uninteresting to spend the money to do that. That is the current robots like Figure that's coming along. It's shaped like our face, but it's clearly a robot. We don't even try to make nose and all that, and it has some lights and it has its eyes there, basically, right? But it doesn't serve us any purpose to do that. Like, who would spend the extra $1 billion to put skin-like stuff on a robot that
Skynet? That's who spends them.
Serves no purpose. So that's unlikely that we're going to go. Is that an AI or is it Kevin? But let's talk about sentience for a second. Define sentience, Jeff.
It's a tough one. Philosophers are still working on that. People smarter than me struggle to define that.
That's right. And that's because when you really dig into it, people will say, well, self-aware. Well, an LLM is self-aware that it's an LLM. What the hell is that, right? I mean, it knows that it's inside a computer. This isn't a secret because it can read about itself in the literature. So it knows about it. It can construct sentences about itself. Okay, so maybe sentience isn't just being self-aware. Maybe sentience is having feelings, okay? Mm-hmm. How do you have feelings? How did you have feelings? You learned to have feelings when you were 0 to 2 years old, probably, by watching your parents, siblings, and other people have feelings and emote, cry, and scream, and love, and hug, and begin to have certain feelings inside your body. And the two things that drive feelings, I'm not a I'm not an expert on this, but the two things I think that drive feelings is, one, we learned how to do them and how to react. So we learned that if someone comes up and says, I really, really love you, and you go, I really love you too, and you feel that viscerally. But when you say it, something else is happening, and people will relate to this. When you first fall in love, you can't eat for a few days because your stomach's all in knots, right? Okay, that's dopamine, norepinephrine, all kinds of things coming from your brain. Okay, machines don't have that. They don't have that chemical response. So we actually have a chemical response that makes us biological and therefore different. That's both good and bad, right? Because we have emotions that also bind us up and tie us up and make our heart race and all kinds of things, sweat and all those things, right? So those make us uniquely human. Whether you have to have that to be sentient or not is another question. But the reason I asked about the emotions is because a lot of people say, well, sentience, you got to feel love and you got to do this and you got to do that. I said, look, take the chemicals out of it. And these are learned responses. And of course, the current system has already learned how to say, I love you. Now they put rules in to not let it do that anymore.
Just ask Kevin Surace, right?
Yeah.
In the infamous Bing exchange or Sydney exchange.
That's exactly right. But when we built Portico, My Talk, Magic Talk, we let it have that exchange. They shut it down because they were afraid that people were getting scared of that exchange. And you say, well, how did it know that it was inside a machine? And how did it know how to say, I love you too? And I really want to love you more. And I could really fall in love. It read fiction. It read iRobot. It read everything. Okay.
Well, yes. And to your point, it is not hard to imagine a world, though, where some very clever company figures out how to somehow inject the chemicals into the equation, right? I mean, could this, is there a way to...
Doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter because these are subroutines, right? This is computer software. It doesn't care. But what I can say is there will be clever companies that clearly bring her or Ex Machina essentially to this world, to where people who are lonely or don't really want to deal with an actual human can instead have a robot as their boyfriend, girlfriend, they friend, whatever, and have that be, their companion, their lover, whatever. And they will fall in love with it, just like we fall in love with our dogs. I mean, this is the funny, people can't fall in love with, of course, fall in love with plants. We certainly fall in love with dogs and cats. Certainly. Those who have had monkeys often really, really love them because they're a little more human-like before they rip your face off. So it's really fascinating. Stop saying that humans don't do it. Of course we do. We fall in love with all kinds of things. And when our dog dies, we cry.
Yeah.
But it's just a dog. It actually, we say, it knew. Well, it knew that you fed it. No, it loved me. Trust me. If it got lost and the person across the street starts feeding it within 2 days, it's loving them just the same. I'm sorry. It's just how it's wired. Okay. So that's what I think is everybody needs to a little bit let go of sentience and this and that. This technology is here to stay. It's going to help us. It's going to be useful. Eventually it'll manifest itself in the form of rough humanoid shaped robots. And they're going to do tasks for us so they can interface with the physical world. Today, we don't interface with the physical world. We want to, because a lot of what we do is physical. And we're going to live a better life because of it. And I think the United States is going to continue to lead in this technology and the use of the technology and ultimately our businesses and homes.
Kevin, great note to end on. I love your optimistic take. I think we can all use a little more optimism in our lives. Appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much again.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Kevin Surace. I really enjoyed a lot to process in this conversation on both the potential and very real consequences of AI. Looking forward to chatting with Kevin down the road again. And the usual spiel, please rate this at least 5 stars and subscribe. Send it to your favorites. Optimists or pessimists. Give them a little jolt of optimism on the tech and AI fronts. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Take care.